Hello, everyone. Today, I want to share with you the extraordinary story of Meryl Streep, a woman who has redefined what it means to be an actress, a woman and a human being in the public eye. For over 5 decades, Meryl has audiences with her incredible talent, her intelligence, her grace, and her unwavering commitment to her craft. But more than that, she has shown us what it means to age with dignity, to balance career and family, to speak truth with courage, and to remain authentic in an industry that often demands conformity. Mary Louise Streep was born on June 22, 1949, in Summit, New Jersey, a comfortable suburban town about 20 miles west of New York City. She was the first child of Mary Wilkinson Streep, a commercial artist, and Harry William Streep Jr., a pharmaceutical executive. Her parents were solidly middle-class, hard-working people who valued education, culture, and family. They provided a stable, loving home for Meryl and her 2 younger brothers, Harry and Dana. Meryl's childhood was, by her own account, quite ordinary. She was not a child star or a prodigy who showed obvious signs of greatness from an early age. In fact, young Mary Louise was somewhat insecure about her appearance. She wore thick glasses, had what she considered an awkward nose, and didn't think of herself as particularly pretty. In a culture that placed enormous value on female beauty, this early experience of feeling not pretty enough would later inform her understanding of women's experiences and her choice of complex, substantial roles over glamorous ones. Her mother was a significant influence in her early life. Mary Wilkinson Streep was an independent, creative woman who had given up her own artistic career to raise her family, as was expected of women in the 1950s. She encouraged her daughter to be curious, to read, to think, and to express herself. She also enrolled young Meryl in voice lessons when she was 12, not because the girl showed any particular musical talent, but because her mother believed that learning to use one's voice properly was important. Those voice lessons turned out to be transformative. Meryl discovered she had a beautiful singing voice, and more importantly, she discovered the joy of performing. She began taking her lessons seriously, practicing diligently, and dreaming of perhaps becoming an opera singer one day. The discipline of vocal training, learning breath control, pitch, tone, and expression would later prove invaluable in her acting career, giving her extraordinary control over her voice and the ability to master any accent or vocal quality a role required. Meryl attended Bernards High School in Bernardsville, New Jersey. She was a good student, popular with her peers, and involved in various activities. But she was also keenly aware of the social expectations placed on girls in the early 1960s. You were supposed to be pretty, pleasant, not too smart or ambitious, interested in boys and fashion and fitting in. Meryl played along with these expectations to some degree, learning early how to perform femininity, how to be what people expected her to be. This ability to observe social roles and perform them convincingly would become the foundation of her acting technique. During high school, Meryl became involved in the school's theater program, almost by accident. A friend convinced her to audition for a play, and once she stepped on stage, something clicked. Acting combined everything she loved, the vocal performance she'd been training for, the opportunity to become someone else, the collaborative nature of creating something with others, and the immediate feedback of an audience's response. She was hooked. After graduating from high school in 1967, Meryl enrolled at Vassar College, one of the prestigious Seven Sisters women's colleges. This was a time of tremendous social upheaval in America. The civil rights movement, the anti-war movement, the women's liberation movement were all gaining momentum. Vassar, traditionally a very conservative finishing school for wealthy young women, was beginning to change, admitting its first male students and encouraging more intellectual rigor and social awareness. At Vassar, Meryl initially planned to major in law, thinking she should pursue something practical and serious. But she couldn't stay away from the theater. She began taking drama classes and performing in campus productions. Her teachers recognized something special in her, a combination of intelligence, emotional depth, technical skill, and an almost chameleon-like ability to transform herself. They encouraged her to consider acting as a serious career, not just a hobby. This was a significant moment for Meryl. In the late 1960s and early 1970s, suggesting that a smart young woman from a good family should become an actress was almost radical. Acting was not considered a respectable profession for educated women. It was seen as frivolous at best, morally questionable at worst. Meryl's parents had invested in her education, expecting her to perhaps become a lawyer or teacher, marry well, and lead a conventional life. Choosing acting meant risking disappointing them and pursuing a career with no guarantee of success. But Meryl had discovered her passion and her gift. She changed her major to drama and threw herself into her studies with characteristic intensity. She studied method acting, classical theater, voice and movement, dramatic literature. She performed in productions of Shakespeare, Chekhov, Brecht, and contemporary playwrights. With each role, she grew more confident and more skilled. By the time she graduated from Vassar in 1971, she knew beyond any doubt that acting was what she wanted to do with her life. After Vassar, Meryl made a bold decision. She applied to the Yale School of Drama, one of the most prestigious and competitive graduate acting programs in the country. Getting accepted to Yale Drama was incredibly difficult. They admitted only a handful of students each year from hundreds of applicants. But Meryl's audition was so impressive that she was not only accepted, but offered a full scholarship. This was validation that she had real talent, that this dream might actually be possible. The 3 years Meryl spent at Yale from 1971 to 1975 were transformative. Yale drama was rigorous, demanding, sometimes brutal. Students were pushed to their limits, challenged constantly, broken down and rebuilt as actors. The training was comprehensive: voice, movement, stage combat, improvisation, scene study, text analysis, theater history. Meryl absorbed it all like a sponge, working harder than she'd ever worked, learning from brilliant teachers and talented classmates. At Yale, Meryl also began to develop her approach to building characters. She was drawn to transformation, the idea that she could completely disappear into a role and become someone utterly different from herself. She studied accents obsessively, listening to recordings, mimicking sounds, training her ear and her mouth to reproduce any pattern of speech. She observed people constantly, how they moved, held their bodies, used their hands, expressed emotions. She read voraciously, building a deep well of knowledge and experience to draw from. During her time at Yale, Meryl performed in more than 40 productions, ranging from Greek tragedies to modern experimental theater. She played queens and servants, young women and old women, Americans and Europeans. With each role, she became more versatile, more confident, more skilled. Her reputation began to spread beyond Yale. New York theater directors and casting agents began to hear about this remarkable young actress who could do anything. But Yale was also where Meryl experienced her first real heartbreak. She fell deeply in love with a fellow acting student named John Cazale. John was several years older than Meryl, already working as a professional actor when he came to Yale to teach and work on a production. He had appeared in The Godfather and The Godfather Part 2, playing Fredo Corleone, and was considered one of the most talented actors of his generation. He was also gentle, intelligent, and deeply committed to his craft. Meryl and John's relationship blossomed during her final year at Yale. They shared a profound connection, both artistic and personal. They understood each other's dedication to acting, supported each other's work, and found in each other a rare combination of intellectual companionship and romantic love. After Meryl graduated from Yale in 1975, she moved to New York City to pursue her professional career, and she and John continued their relationship. Meryl's professional career began in New York theater. She joined the New York Shakespeare Festival and began performing in productions both in Central Park and at the Public Theater. Her performances were immediately noticed by critics and audiences. Here was an actress who could handle the language of Shakespeare with ease, who could make characters feel immediate and real, who could move seamlessly from comedy to tragedy. In 1976, Meryl appeared in a production of 27 Wagons Full of Cotton and other Tennessee Williams plays at the Phoenix Theater. Her performance earned her a Tony Award nomination, an extraordinary achievement for such a young actress in her first professional productions. The nomination put her on the map in the New York theater world. Everyone wanted to know, who is this Meryl Streep? That same year, Meryl made her film debut in Julia, starring Jane Fonda and Vanessa Redgrave. Her role was tiny. She appeared in just one scene, but it was her introduction to film acting. She found the process fascinating but very different from theater. In theater, you build a performance over time, night after night, in front of a live audience. In film, you shoot scenes out of order, often with long waits between setups, and you never know exactly what the final product will look like. Meryl had to learn a new set of skills: hitting marks, being aware of the camera, modulating her performance for the intimacy of the camera rather than the distance of the theater. In 1977, Meryl appeared in her first significant film role in the television miniseries Holocaust. This four-part series told the story of a German Jewish family during the Nazi era, and Meryl played a German woman married to a Jewish artist. It was a demanding role that required her to speak German and to portray someone who watches her world collapse and her family destroyed. Meryl's performance was heartbreaking and powerful. The miniseries was watched by millions and earned her an Emmy Award. Suddenly, she wasn't just a promising theater actress, she was a rising star. But even as her career was taking off, Meryl was facing a personal crisis. In early 1978, John Cazale was diagnosed with terminal lung cancer. He was only 42 years old. The diagnosis was devastating. John had been cast in The Deer Hunter, a major film about Vietnam veterans directed by Michael Cimino, and he was determined to complete the film despite his illness. Meryl, deeply in love and wanting to support him, accepted a small role in the film primarily so she could be with John during the shooting. The filming of The Deer Hunter was grueling. Long days, difficult conditions, emotionally demanding scenes. John was visibly ill and growing weaker, but he gave everything to his performance. Meryl cared for him between takes, supporting him physically and emotionally, all while delivering her own powerful performance in the film. Everyone on set was aware of what was happening, and many have spoken about Meryl's extraordinary strength and dedication during this period. John Cazale died on March 12, 1978, shortly after filming was completed. He was only 42 years old. Meryl was 38 and utterly devastated. She had lost the man she loved, the partner she thought she would spend her life with. The grief was overwhelming. She questioned whether she could continue acting, whether anything mattered anymore. Friends worried about her. She had lost weight and seemed lost in her sorrow. It was John's friend and fellow actor, Joe Papp, who helped Meryl through this dark time. He cast her in a production of The Taming of the Shrew in Central Park, giving her something to focus on, a reason to get up each day. The work helped. Being on stage, losing herself in a character, connecting with an audience. These things reminded her why she acted in the first place. Slowly, she began to heal. 6 months after John's death, Meryl met Don Gummer. Don was a sculptor, a quiet, thoughtful man completely outside the entertainment industry. He was a friend of Meryl's brother, and they met when Meryl needed a place to stay after having to leave the apartment she'd shared with John. Don offered to let her stay in his apartment while he was away. When he returned, they began spending time together. Don was everything John had been, but also different. He was stable, grounded, calm. He didn't compete with Meryl or feel threatened by her talent or success. He had his own creative work that fulfilled him. He was kind and patient with her grief, understanding that she would always love John, that he wasn't trying to replace anyone, but simply offering himself as he was. Meryl found in Don a different kind of love, not the passionate, all-consuming romance she'd had with John, but a deeper, steadier partnership built on mutual respect, understanding, and genuine affection. Meryl and Don were married on September 30th, 1978, just 6 months after they met. Many people thought she was rushing into marriage, marrying on the rebound, making a mistake. But Meryl knew what she was doing. She had learned from losing John how precious and fragile life is, how important it is to hold on to love when you find it. She and Don understood each other, supported each other, and wanted the same things from life. It wasn't a mistake. It was one of the best decisions she ever made. More than 45 years later, they're still married, still partners, still in love. In 1979, Meryl's career reached a new level with Kramer vs. Kramer. This film, starring Dustin Hoffman, told the story of a divorce and custody battle, examining how the breakdown of a marriage affects everyone involved, especially the child caught in the middle. Meryl played Joanna Kramer, the wife and mother who leaves her husband and child, then returns a year later wanting custody of her son. Playing Joanna was challenging because the character could easily have been seen as simply villainous, the bad mother who abandons her child. But Meryl understood that Joanna was more complex than that. She was a woman who felt trapped, suffocated by the expectations of wife and motherhood, desperate to find herself. Meryl worked hard to make Joanna sympathetic and understandable without excusing her actions. She wanted audiences to see Joanna as a full human being, not a stereotype. Meryl famously clashed with Dustin Hoffman during the filming. Hoffman was known for his intense method approach to acting, which sometimes included behaving badly to provoke authentic reactions from his co-stars. He would deliberately try to throw Meryl off during takes, changing lines, doing unexpected things. Meryl found this approach unprofessional and disrespectful, but she held her own, matching him scene for scene. Their on-screen chemistry was electric precisely because of this tension. Kramer versus Kramer was both a critical and commercial success. The film earned 5 Academy Award nominations, including Best Picture, Best Actor for Hoffman, Best Supporting Actress for Meryl, and Best Director. At the ceremony in April 1980, both Hoffman and Meryl won. It was Meryl's first Oscar, and she was only 30 years old. In her acceptance speech, she was gracious and brief, thanking everyone involved and acknowledging how fortunate she felt. Winning an Oscar so early in her career could have been limiting. She could have been typecast or felt pressure to only take certain kinds of roles. But Meryl was determined to use her success as a platform, to be choosy, to select roles that interested and challenged her, to work with directors who respected her as a collaborator. She didn't want to be just a movie star. She wanted to be an artist. In 1981, Meryl appeared in The French Lieutenant's Woman, a complex, layered film that told 2 parallel stories, one set in Victorian England, the other in contemporary times, about actors making a film. Meryl played both a Victorian woman trapped by social conventions and a modern actress playing that role. The film required her to move between time periods, between emotional registers, between different types of performance. It was intellectually and emotionally demanding, exactly the kind of challenge Meryl loved. Her performance earned her another Academy Award nomination for Best Actress. Though she didn't win, the nomination solidified her reputation as the most talented actress of her generation. Directors wanted to work with her. Scripts were written with her in mind. She could essentially choose her projects. Then came 1982 and Sophie's Choice, the role that many still consider Meryl's greatest performance. The film, based on William Styron's novel, told the story of Sophie Zawistowski, a Polish Catholic survivor of Auschwitz living in Brooklyn after World War II. Sophie carries with her a terrible secret, a choice she was forced to make in the concentration camp that haunts her every moment. To prepare for the role, Meryl learned to speak both Polish and German fluently. She studied Holocaust history extensively, reading survivor testimonies, visiting museums, trying to understand the incomprehensible. She worked with a dialect coach for months to perfect Sophie's accent, Polish-inflected English that would be authentic and consistent. She lost weight to look like someone who had survived starvation. She immersed herself completely in Sophie's trauma and suffering. The performance Meryl gave in Sophie's Choice is almost unbearably powerful. She inhabits Sophie so completely that you forget you're watching an actress. The famous scene where Sophie's terrible choice is revealed, forced by a Nazi officer to choose which of her 2 children will be sent to the gas chamber, is one of the most devastating moments in cinema history. Meryl's anguish is so real, so raw, that audiences weep watching it even decades later. Sophie's Choice earned Meryl her 2nd Academy Award, this time for Best Actress. She was 33 years old and had won 2 Oscars in 3 years. She was being called the greatest actress of her generation, perhaps one of the greatest ever. But Meryl didn't let the acclaim go to her head. She remained focused on the work, on continuing to grow and challenge herself as an artist. Throughout the 1980s, Meryl continued to choose roles that showcased her incredible range. She played a Polish Holocaust survivor, a Danish plantation owner in Africa, a working-class mother fighting against nuclear contamination, an Australian mother accused of murdering her baby, a contemporary New York writer. Each role was completely different, requiring different accents, different physical bearing, different emotional cores. Meryl disappeared into each one. Out of Africa, 1985, directed by Sidney Pollack, paired Meryl with Robert Redford in a sweeping romance set in colonial Kenya. Meryl played Karen Blixen, a Danish baroness who runs a coffee plantation and has an affair with a big-game hunter. The film required Meryl to master a Danish accent and to convey both the romanticism and the colonialism of the story. Her performance was elegant, intelligent, and nuanced. The film won the Academy Award for Best Picture, and Meryl received another nomination. In A Cry in the Dark, 1988, Meryl played Lindy Chamberlain, an Australian mother whose baby disappeared, allegedly taken by a dingo, and who was accused of murder in a sensational trial that gripped Australia. Meryl not only mastered the Australian accent, but captured the peculiar position of a woman, judged by the public for not grieving in the right way, for being too controlled, too stoic. The film examined how society expects women to perform grief and judges them when they don't conform to expectations. By the end of the 1980s, Meryl had been nominated for an Academy Award 8 times in just over a decade. This was unprecedented. No other actor, male or female, had accumulated nominations at such a rate. But with this recognition came pressure, and sometimes backlash. Some critics began to complain that Meryl was too technical, that her performances were masterful but cold, that you could see the acting. This criticism hurt, but Meryl used it to push herself to become even better, to find ways to make her technical mastery invisible. During all of this professional success, Meryl was also building a family. She and Don had 4 children: Henry, born 1979, Mamie, born 1983, Grace, born 1986, and Louisa, born 1991. Meryl was determined to be a present, engaged mother despite her demanding career. She turned down roles that would require long location shoots when her children were young. She scheduled her work around school schedules when possible. She brought her family with her on location when she could. This balancing act between career and family was not easy, and Meryl has been honest about the challenges. In a culture that tells women they can have it all while providing little support for working mothers, Meryl found herself constantly navigating guilt, exhaustion, and conflicting demands. She had help: nannies, her husband's support, her own mother's assistance. But she still felt the pressure that working mothers feel, multiplied by the demands of her high-profile career. Meryl has spoken about how her children kept her grounded, reminded her of what truly matters, and gave her perspective on her work. When you come home from playing an emotionally devastating role, and your kids need help with homework and dinner needs to be made, you can't stay in character or wallow in the intensity of your work. You have to be present for your family. This grounding was healthy for Meryl, preventing her from becoming too consumed by her roles or too isolated in the bubble of fame. The 1990s brought new challenges and new triumphs. Meryl appeared in The Bridges of Madison County, 1995, directed by Clint Eastwood, playing an Italian war bride living on an Iowa farm who has a brief, intense affair with a photographer passing through. The film was a romance for adults, dealing with themes of choice, sacrifice, and roads not taken. Meryl's performance was subtle and deeply moving, showing a woman who chooses duty over passion, but carries that brief moment of true connection for the rest of her life. Meryl also began to show her comedic talents more fully. In Death Becomes Her, 1992, she played a vain actress who drinks a potion promising eternal youth and beauty, with hilarious and grotesque results. In She-Devil, 1989, she played a glamorous romance novelist who steals another woman's husband. These roles allowed Meryl to show her gift for physical comedy, her willingness to look ridiculous, her understanding that comedy requires just as much skill and commitment as drama. As Meryl moved through her 40s and into her 50s, she faced the reality that Hollywood had less interest in stories about middle-aged women. The roles being offered to her became less frequent and less interesting. Many actresses in their 50s found themselves unable to get work at all, considered too old to be romantic leads but not old enough to play grandmothers. This ageism in Hollywood was frustrating and insulting to Meryl, who was at the height of her powers as an actress, but finding fewer opportunities to use those powers. But Meryl didn't accept this situation quietly. She began to speak out about ageism and sexism in Hollywood. She pointed out the absurdity of a culture that found older men attractive and interesting, but dismissed older women. She noted that there were far fewer good roles for women than for men at every age, but especially as women age. She used her platform and her power to advocate for change. Meryl also made strategic choices to work with female directors and writers, to champion projects about women's stories, to produce films herself. When she couldn't find what she wanted to act in, she understood that if the industry wasn't going to change on its own, people like her, with power and influence, needed to push for change. In 2006, at age 57, Meryl appeared in The Devil Wears Prada, playing Miranda Priestley, the demanding editor of a fashion magazine. The role was originally envisioned as a villain, but Meryl saw something more complex. A powerful woman in a male-dominated industry who had to be harder, colder, and more demanding than any man to maintain her position. She played Miranda with intelligence and even sympathy, making her formidable but understandable. The Devil Wears Prada was a huge commercial success, proving that audiences would show up for movies about women, starring women, even women over 50. Meryl's performance was both acclaimed and beloved. The film introduced her to a new generation of fans who might not have seen her earlier dramatic work. Suddenly, young women were discovering Meryl and going back to watch her decades of brilliant performances? In 2008, Meryl appeared in Mamma Mia, a musical based on the songs of ABBA. She sang, danced, and radiated joy in a role that was pure fun. Critics were sometimes dismissive of the film, but audiences loved it, and it became one of the highest-grossing musical films ever. Meryl, in her late 50s, was singing ABBA songs in a Greek island and having a wonderful time. She showed that aging didn't mean becoming serious and somber. You could still have fun, be silly, enjoy yourself. Julie and Julia, 2009, gave Meryl one of her most delightful roles, Julia Child, the famous television chef who taught Americans to cook French food. Meryl captured Julia's distinctive voice, her physical presence, her enthusiasm, and her genuine love of food and cooking. But beyond the technical mimicry, Meryl found the essence of who Julia was, a woman who found her passion later in life and pursued it with joy. The performance earned Meryl yet another Oscar nomination. In 2011, Meryl played Margaret Thatcher in The Iron Lady, chronicling the life of Britain's first female prime minister. Thatcher was a polarizing figure, admired by some, despised by others. And Meryl had to navigate these conflicting views while creating a fully realized human portrait. She showed Thatcher's strength and determination, but also her loneliness, her struggles with gender discrimination, and her eventual decline into dementia. The performance earned Meryl her third Academy Award, this time for playing Thatcher. At 62, she became one of the oldest actresses ever to win Best Actress. In her acceptance speech, Meryl thanked her husband Don, saying, "First, I'm going to thank Don because when you thank your husband at the end of the speech, they play him out with the music, and I want him to know that everything I value most in our lives, you've given me." It was a beautiful moment of public acknowledgement of the partnership that had sustained her for more than 30 years. By the 2010s, Meryl had been nominated for an Academy Award a record 21 times, more than any other actor in history. She had won 3 times. She had also won numerous Golden Globes, BAFTAs, Screen Actors Guild Awards, and virtually every other acting honor that exists. She was regularly called the greatest living actress, perhaps the greatest film actress ever. Her career had spanned 5 decades, and she showed no signs of slowing down. But what makes Meryl truly beloved, especially among those of us who have watched her career unfold over decades, is not just her talent. It's her intelligence, her dignity, her advocacy for what's right, and her example of how to live a life of meaning and purpose. Meryl has used her platform to speak out on issues she cares about: women's rights, equality, the importance of the arts, respect for truth and facts. In 2017, Meryl gave a powerful speech at the Golden Globe Awards, using her platform to speak about the importance of empathy, diversity, and the press. She didn't mention President Trump by name, but she criticized his mocking of a disabled reporter and warned about the dangers of disrespecting others. The speech was controversial. Some praised her courage. Others criticized her for being political. But it was quintessentially Meryl, thoughtful, articulate, grounded in values, and willing to speak uncomfortable truths. Meryl's marriage to Don Gummer has become a model of lasting partnership in an industry where marriages rarely last. They've been married for more than 45 years, raising 4 children together, supporting each other's careers, and maintaining a private life away from the Hollywood spotlight. Don is rarely on red carpets with Meryl. He prefers to stay in the background, supporting her from there. But everyone who knows them speaks of their deep love and mutual respect. Their children have all grown up to be accomplished in their own right. Mamie Gummer and Grace Gummer are both actresses, following in their mother's footsteps but carving their own paths. Henry is a musician. Louisa works in modeling and acting. Meryl and Don raised them away from Hollywood in Connecticut, giving them as normal a childhood as possible given their mother's fame. By all accounts, they're grounded, decent people who value family and work hard, a testament to their parents' values. Meryl has spoken about the challenge of raising children while maintaining a demanding career. She's been honest about the guilt she felt, the moments she missed, the times she wasn't there because she was on location or exhausted from work. But she's also talked about the importance of showing her daughters that women can have careers, can pursue their passions, can be more than just mothers and wives. She wanted her children to see her as a whole person, not just in her role as their mother. As Meryl has aged, she's become even more outspoken about issues facing women, particularly older women. She's talked about how Hollywood treats aging actresses, how there are fewer roles for women over 50, how women are judged by their appearance in ways men are not. She's questioned why an older man paired romantically with a much younger woman on screen is accepted without comment, but an older woman with a younger man is considered unrealistic or uncomfortable. Meryl has also been refreshingly honest about aging itself. She hasn't had obvious plastic surgery or tried to look decades younger than she is. She's let her hair go gray, allowed the lines on her face to show, aged naturally and gracefully. In doing so, she's challenged Hollywood's obsession with youth and beauty, demonstrating that an older woman can still be interesting, attractive, vital, and worthy of leading roles. In recent years, Meryl has continued to choose fascinating, diverse roles. She played a rock star mother in Ricky and the Flash, a controlling mother in August Osage County, a newspaper publisher fighting for press freedom in The Post, and a wealthy New Yorker with a terrible singing voice who dreams of performing at Carnegie Hall in Florence Foster Jenkins. Each role showcased different aspects of her talent and her willingness to take risks. The Post 2017, directed by Steven Spielberg and co-starring Tom Hanks, was particularly meaningful. The film told the story of the Washington Post's decision to publish the Pentagon Papers, classified documents revealing government lies about the Vietnam War. Meryl played Katharine Graham, the newspaper's publisher, who had to decide whether to publish despite legal threats and enormous pressure. The film was about the importance of a free press, the courage required to pursue truth, and a woman finding her voice and her power. Meryl brought depth and nuance to Katharine Graham, showing her insecurity and self-doubt. She had inherited the paper from her husband and was often underestimated and condescended to by the men around her, as well as her growing confidence and ultimate courage. The performance resonated deeply in the current moment, when questions about press freedom, truth, and speaking up against power are so relevant. In 2019, Meryl appeared in the second season of the HBO series Big Little Lies, playing the mother-in-law of one of the main characters. It was her first major television role in decades, and she threw herself into it with the same commitment she brings to film roles. The character was complicated, grieving, controlling, seeking truth, but also vengeance. And Meryl made her both sympathetic and frightening. Meryl's work ethic is legendary. She prepares meticulously for every role, doing extensive research, learning accents and skills, understanding her character's background and psychology. On set, she's completely professional, always prepared, always on time, collaborative with directors and fellow actors. She doesn't demand special treatment or behave like a diva. Despite being arguably the most acclaimed actress alive, she approaches each role with humility and curiosity. Directors and actors who have worked with Meryl consistently speak about her generosity as a collaborator. She doesn't try to dominate scenes or upstage other actors. She listens, responds truthfully, and works to make the whole film better, not just her own performance. She's secure enough in her own talent that she doesn't need to prove anything. She just wants to serve the story. Meryl's political and social advocacy has been consistent throughout her career. She's a longtime supporter of women's rights and has been involved with various organizations working for gender equality. She's spoken about the need for equal pay for women in Hollywood and beyond. She's advocated for better representation of women in film, both in front of and behind the camera. She's supported arts education, understanding that access to the arts can transform lives. She's also been a vocal advocate for environmental causes, supporting organizations working on climate change and conservation. She's used her platform to raise awareness about human rights issues around the world. She's donated time and money to causes she believes in, often quietly, without seeking publicity. Her activism comes from a deep sense of responsibility. She believes that those with platforms and resources have an obligation to use them for good. Meryl's relationship with her fans is interesting. She's not particularly active on social media and maintains a relatively private life. But when she does interact with fans at events, premieres, or chance encounters, she's warm and gracious. She understands that for many people, meeting her is a special moment, and she tries to make it positive. There are countless stories of Meryl being kind, taking time for photos, having genuine conversations with people she meets. At the same time, Meryl has been able to maintain boundaries and privacy. She doesn't share details of her family life, doesn't discuss her marriage in intimate detail, keeps her children largely out of the spotlight. This balance, being accessible and gracious while maintaining privacy, is something many celebrities struggle with, but Meryl has managed it with grace. Meryl's impact on acting and on cinema is immeasurable. She's raised the bar for what's possible in film performance, showing that movie acting can be as technically skilled, as emotionally deep, and as transformative as the best stage acting. She's demonstrated that actresses can have long careers, can continue to do their best work. As they age, can be more than their appearance or their romantic roles. She's also opened doors for other women. By speaking out about sexism and ageism in Hollywood, by supporting female directors and writers, by producing films herself, she's helped create more opportunities for women in the industry. Younger actresses often cite Meryl as an inspiration and a model for the kind of career they hope to have. Long, diverse, substantial, and guided by artistic integrity rather than commercial calculation. For those of us in our senior years, Meryl Streep represents something powerful. She shows us that aging doesn't mean becoming invisible or irrelevant. She demonstrates that you can continue to grow, learn, and do your best work in your 60s and 70s. She proves that intelligence, talent, and integrity are more valuable and lasting than youth and beauty. She reminds us that it's possible to have a successful career, in a strong marriage, and a close family. It's not easy. It requires sacrifice and hard work, but it's possible. Meryl also represents a kind of feminism that resonates with many older women. She doesn't claim that women can have it all without struggle. She's honest about the challenges, the compromises, the guilt. But she also insists that women deserve opportunities, deserve respect, deserve to be more than wives and mothers, deserve to pursue their own dreams and talents. This honest, pragmatic feminism speaks to women who lived through the women's liberation movement, who fought for opportunities their mothers didn't have, who tried to balance career and family in a world that didn't make it easy. The awards and accolades Meryl has received are too numerous to list completely, but they include 3 Academy Awards, 9 Golden Globes, 2 BAFTAs, 3 Emmy Awards, and the Presidential Medal of Freedom, which she received from President Obama in 2014. She's been honored by the Kennedy Center, the American Film Institute, and countless other organizations. These honors recognize not just her talent, but her contribution to American culture and her embodiment of artistic excellence. But perhaps more meaningful than awards are the countless lives Meryl has touched through her work. How many people have seen themselves in her characters, found comfort or understanding or inspiration? How many young women decided to pursue acting because they saw what Meryl could do? How many marriages have been saved by couples watching Kramer versus Kramer and talking about what they saw? How many people have been moved to think about history, justice, love, loss, courage through Meryl's performances? Meryl once said in an interview, "The great gift of human beings is that we have the power of empathy." This belief in empathy is at the core of her approach to acting and to life. Each character she plays is an exercise in empathy, trying to understand someone different from herself, finding the humanity in people who might seem foreign or difficult, showing audiences that we're all more alike than different in our hopes, fears, loves, and losses. This empathy extends beyond her acting. Meryl has shown empathy for struggling artists, for women facing discrimination, for refugees fleeing violence, for anyone who is vulnerable or marginalized. She understands that her privilege and success come with responsibility, the responsibility to speak up, to help others, to use her power for good. As Meryl moves through her 70s, she continues to work, to challenge herself, to advocate for what she believes in. She's not ready to retire or rest on her laurels. There are still stories she wants to tell, still characters she wants to explore, still causes she wants to support. Her energy and commitment are an inspiration to anyone who wonders if they're too old to keep pursuing their passions. Meryl's legacy is already secure. She's redefined what's possible for actresses, shown that women's stories matter, demonstrated that artistic integrity and commercial success don't have to be opposed, and modeled how to live a life of purpose, passion, and principle. She's shown that you can be talented without being arrogant, successful without being ruthless, famous without being superficial, powerful without being cruel. For those of us who have watched Meryl's career unfold over 5 decades, she feels like someone we know, even though we've never met her. We've watched her grow from a young theater actress to the most acclaimed film actress of our time. We've seen her play dozens of characters, each one distinct and memorable. We've witnessed her balance career and family, navigate the challenges of aging in Hollywood, and use her platform to advocate for positive change. Meryl Streep has shown us what excellence looks like, not just in acting, but in living. She's demonstrated that you can pursue your passion with dedication while maintaining your integrity and values. She's proven that you can age with grace and power, that you can speak truth without being cruel, that you can be successful without compromising who you are. She's reminded us that empathy, intelligence, hard work, and commitment to something larger than yourself are the qualities that matter most. Thank you, Meryl, for 5 decades of brilliant performances that have moved us, challenged us, and enriched our lives. Thank you for showing us what's possible when talent meets integrity, when artistry meets empathy, when success meets humility. Thank you for using your voice and your platform to advocate for those with less power. Thank you for aging with such grace and showing us that women remain vital, interesting, and valuable throughout their lives. Thank you for being not just a great actress, but a great example of how to live with purpose and principle. Your work and your life have made the world better, and that's a legacy that transcends any award or accolade.